Yo, this right here could affect every single gacha game in the world. Every gacha game that you play. Every gacha game that you love. Games with loot boxes will be rated PEGI 16 from June 2026 as part of sweeping changes to the age rating system. Which could, you know what, in theory mean that gooner gacha games could potentially allow for even more gooning than ever before because they don't have to be concerned with the restrictions of being a more safer, work-friendly game. PEGI director Dirk Bosmans explains why the European body is rethinking how it rates games, taking into account online interactive risks such as battle passes and login streaks. I mean, honestly, battle passes are perfectly fine, and login streaks, there's nothing wrong with rewarding your players for logging in every day and playing the goddamn game. But it looks like this is specifically pertaining to Europe, so it might not affect North America. Not entirely sure yet. We'll read through this and find out. From the beginning of June, submitted games that contain paid random items such as loot boxes will be rated 16 under the Pan-European Games Information age rating system. The June changes also extend to in-game purchases, online communication, pressure to play through incentives to revisit a game, such as daily quests. So every single gacha game, every single MMORPG, anything. Wow. Okay. Okay, sure. Wow, what an age we're living in. The full changes are as follows. Paid random items. Games containing paid random items such as card packs, gacha systems, or keys to unlock random items, we rated PEGI 16. Social casino games, we rated PEGI 18. So yeah, this definitely affects a lot of third-person, first-person shooters, competitive games. It affects the MMOs. It affects the gacha games. They're essentially like blanket rating everything 16 plus. A significant amount of games. Goddamn. In-game purchases. Games that offer time or quantity limited offers, such as paid battle passes or countdown timers, we rated PEGI 12. But if in-game controls are included that turn off spending by default, this rating will be lowered to PEGI 7. Any games with purchases linked to NFTs that are required to play, and are NFTs even still a thing at this juncture? Goddamn. That are required to play and that can be traded in-game will be rated PEGI 18. Okay, you know what? Fuck NFTs anyway. But it looks like battle passes, countdown timers will be PEGI 12. Any game that offers time or quantity limited offers. Yeah, that's a large portion of live service games. Pressure to play. Any game that offers incentives to revisit or play by appointment, such as daily quests or login streaks, rated PEGI 7. So only 7. They made it seem like this is going to be PEGI 16 just for having daily quests. Okay, so maybe not. But I mean, daily quest. God damn. Okay. Why are y'all targeting daily quests? We should be rewarded for logging in every single day and supporting our games. Games that include paid battle passes with rewards that become unobtainable if certain goals are not met will be rated PEGI 12. That's like the vast majority of battle passes. Likewise, games in which the player's acquired content or status can be lost if they do not return to the game will also be rated PEGI 12. Safe online gameplay. In rare cases in which a game offers completely unrestricted communication functionality without any reporting systems or community standards, for example, rated PEGI 18. So I guess a lot of competitive games aren't really going to fall into this category because a lot of them technically, and they border on unsupervised. But for the most part, they offer a reporting system. It might not do a whole lot, but reporting systems exist within the game. The new rules will only apply to games that are submitted for classification from June onwards. Wait, no! Oh my God! Wait, classification from June on. So that means every existing video game, in theory, is going to be okay, but every future video game that receives a new classification might be subject to these new ratings. So let's say as an example, because, we're all gacha gamers here. Wuthering Waves and Genshin might be like PEGI 12 or PEGI 13, but Azure Premilia or Neverness to Everness or Ananta or any game that comes out like these games might be rated PEGI 15 or PEGI 18 or God knows what else. Oh, I'm not saying they will be. And, certain requirements do have to be met to hit that PEGI 18 number, but certain gacha games are also right now like PEGI 7. So it's crazy that future games are going to be affected more than current games, which means if you want to get around this, make sure you release your game before June 2026. Holy crap. For loot boxes in particular, rules have been tightening around the world for some time now, as Game Industry Biz has been covering in our annual loot box state of play features. Belgium, for example, banned loot boxes back in 2018, although there are some suggestions that the ban hasn't been strictly enforced, while Australia has required games containing loot boxes to be rated 15 since 2024. And you know what? I am firmly of the opinion that kids should not be allowed to play gacha games. Or if they're going to be able to play gacha games, they should be able to play like a variant of the gacha game that we all play. Maybe that you could attain like a limited number of characters in or something. You know, you shouldn't give children the ability here to gamble in gacha games. These should be things that are targeted at more developed adult human beings. And let's be real, a lot of adults also have no self-control or awareness in any capacity. The PEGI rules shakeup could mean that some upcoming titles in well-known franchises will potentially have a much higher age rating than the developers perhaps anticipated, which doesn't bode well. The PEGI system is used across almost the whole of Europe. In the UK, it took over legal responsibility for games ratings from the British Board of Film Classification in 2012. One of the few countries in which PEGI is not used is Germany. So that's actually where Gamescom takes place, whose age rating system, USK, Unterhaltsloften Software of Sissel Hocken Drossenflog, predated the formation of PEGI. And that is very fluent German, by the way. I enunciated that very well. Yo, I don't mean to interrupt the video, but I need to take a moment here to thank all my incredible patrons over on Patreon whose support continues to allow for me to do regular videos like this every single day on this channel. Thank y'all so much, including our YouTube channel members. You guys mean the world to me. So do you guys as viewers as well. Now, without further ado, let's continue. In 2023, USK made some, I'm glad we're abbreviating it to USK here, made some sweeping changes to comply with an update of the German Youth Protection Act with ratings taking into account things like loot boxes and online risk. Now PEGI is following suit. We've actually worked together with USK quite closely to make sure that we once again realign, says Dick Bosums, oh my god, I'm director of PEGI, in an interview with Games Industry, because over time, if you go back more than 3 years ago, you can see that the USK rating outcomes were quite similar to PEGI. The last major change to PEGI's rating system was the introduction of an in-game purchase content descriptor back in 2019, but now online interactive risks such as time or quantity limited in-game purchases will be taken into account in the age rating itself. Okay, cool. PEGI uses 5 age ratings. Was that 5? Oh, 3, 7. So, okay, I know certain gacha games that will be under the 3 category right there. This could potentially affect the ratings for a large portion of new games, judging by past experiences in Germany. Elizabeth Sucker, managing director of USK, said in a press release statement that at least one of the new USK criteria has been applied to approximately 30% of all games that were submitted once we updated our system. Around 1 in 3 of those games have been given a higher age rating as a result. So maybe this will affect, maybe they're going to go through a reclassification process where they get new classifications, age ratings, dependent on the on whether or not the developer or the publisher, or maybe they'll be forced to submit. I'm not entirely sure. Traditionally, PEGI focused on the content of a game, things like woohooing, drugs, and violence, but Bosoms explains there's a growing need to take the context of a game into account to provide guidance for parents in terms of who their children are playing with, how long they play for, and how they are encouraged to spend. They shouldn't be spending. They're kids. Yo, little kids should not have access to a credit card. I'm sorry. He explained that PEGI looked at how these changes have been introduced in Germany and then considered how they could replicate them. What is interesting is that the USK introduced mitigating factors, mitigating elements that were built in by video game companies to reduce the risks. He says, we're looking to introduce this as well. If a game is in-game controls that put off spending by default, meaning that the parent actively needs to go into the game and turn spending on, so that normally a child, when they're playing it, they cannot access any of these offers, then a game can have a PEGI 7. That is the rule for in-game purchases, but would the same apply for paid random items if a game's spending was off by default? Not right now, but maybe in the future, confirms Bosoms, adding that more needs to be done in terms of convincing lawmakers of the effectiveness of parental control systems for video games, even though they have already come a long way. They started off as an obscure setting in the settings menu in a machine that parents were afraid to touch, and these days, especially platform parental controls are very accessible mobile apps. With a touch of a button, I can now see my son has been playing today, and he can just send me a text and say, Dad, I've done my homework, I played my guitar, can I get 30 more minutes? So if a parent, the parent is gonna put the kid down in front of the TV and be like, play for 4 hours because I want to disconnect now from this reality that is my life, where I have to go to work a 9 to 5, come home, pick up the kids, look after the kids, cook dinner, and then Yeah, that's what video games are good for these days. If a parent takes the step to get accustomed with these tools, they can be incredibly effective, but I think we're not there yet in terms of convincing lawmakers how effective they really are. I think especially in the debates around age verification, this robustness is going to grow. That's my expectation. That's my hope. And then we may be able to apply. I mean, like, age verification, that's a very slippery slope right now. It's a very gray area. There are a lot of people for it and a lot of people against it. It's interesting, though, seeing how the internet is developing and how video games are also developing. Bosom says that PEGI has consulted with the industry before introducing the changes. In our management board, we have some video game companies represented, as well as some national trade associations. He says, adding that PEGI also worked with academics to gather evidence, as well as examiners from bodies like the Games Rating Authority. We very strongly rely on their advice when it comes to the impact of these age ratings. There's also the PEGI Council, that's apparently a thing, which is a meeting with representatives from the various countries where PEGI is used. So these are people from ministries of culture, media councils, ministries of family. It's very diverse. We normally use them to keep them updated on what PEGI does and how we change the wheels and cogs behind the scenes or screens to keep the age ratings, categories, and content descriptors relevant for payments today. But it's also interesting if something's happening in their country that is relevant to us that we can anticipate. Bosom says that 6 months ago, PEGI began meetings with all the above to discuss the proposed changes. Sometimes it was like, I think there's on the low end, or this is on the low end. Sometimes, for example, with these incentives to revisit the game, they said, I consider these things to be the fun parts to keep the game fun, but ultimately we thrive by consensus. So it was a lot of talking, a lot of consulting. So it's the whole collective here of people that want to restrict access to various different kinds of video games. It's not just one person, it's not just two people, it's a whole group of them. PEGI is also keenly aware of the way that wind is blowing in terms of legislation across Europe. I'd argue that the Digital Services Act and the Digital Fairness Act, they serve as like, hey, this is coming, says Bosoms. Although these concerns have been on our radar for a while, we'd like to see our narrative or explanation about parental control tools it wasn't going to be sufficient. So as the pressure is rising, you need to assess to what degree you need to evolve more. I do want to point out, though, while I do think I am vehemently against children themselves being able to, directly access anything that requires a payment processor, I don't think that games should be censored or people should be inhibited from playing them. What I want, and in a perfect world, these kids would either just have access to their own games and wouldn't be able to play gacha games. These kids would just be able to play an altered version, maybe a highly limited version of the game that doesn't, again, have access to all the characters that you obtain through gacha. Maybe just have like an altered version where they have a core cast of characters and they can just play through the game from that perspective, and then have, people that are of legal age actually be able to participate in the gacha itself. So have the gacha just as an additive, as an option. So you have a child-friendly version of the game that all the kids can play, and then a not child-friendly version of the game with the gacha actually implemented. That way, everyone has access to the game, but the kids, well, they're not actively engaging in gambling. So I think that ultimately solves every single problem. Ultimately, he says the changes are about making sure parents are as informed as possible. We always say, look, if we say that video game is 16 and you let your 14-year-old play it, if you know that the game is 16 and you decide that your 14-year-old is old enough to play the game, that's an informed decision. That's different from, I don't know what this all is here, play it, and I don't need to deal with it. That's how that's how a lot of adults are, though. I know a lot of parents, and that is genuinely how a lot of them are. But at the same time, I think, like, in a lot of instances, disregarding games that have paid elements like gacha or loot boxes, a lot of 14-year-olds play 16-plus games. A lot of 12-year-olds play 16-plus games. A lot of teenagers watch horror movies that are rated R. So, I mean, that's the world we live in. However, he does anticipate some pushback from game companies. I mean, naturally, and it's to be expected. It's not unthinkable that in the next few months, some companies will go like, this is outrageous. But I'd also like to ask them to read the room and see where we are these days in terms of regulatory pressure. On the one hand, responsibilities of the industry. On the other hand, how to move forward in between those. I think it's also culture reliant, because North America, as an example, doesn't really seem to be as upset with these kinds of scenarios, situations. I think Europe definitely is. I think a lot of Asian countries, they have playtime restrictions as well, and that's kind of like what is going on here. They're going to have, they're going to desensitize or de-incentivize, rather, regular playing of video games. Much like how China restricts your total playtime. You get those little notifications popping up saying, you've been playing for 3 hours, stop playing the game. So I think a lot of the world understands that video games can be a bit of a problem if you don't play them in moderation, and if you don't prevent children who have no self-control from making purchases. I mean, there are kids that have spent like 50 grand of their parents' money when they grabbed their credit card and they, you know, went and bought a bunch of characters in Genshin Impact as an example. So this is definitely an issue. And I do think, again, like I noted that ultimately you could very easily fix this by just having 2 versions of a game, one for children, one not for children. But I'm curious to see where this goes in the future, because this is a big change, and this could change the entire gacha landscape. I know you think that you just hit the end of the video, and technically, yeah, you have. And I know your first reaction is to close out of it at this juncture, but don't. No, instead, I urge you to take a moment here and click one of the videos on screen that are coming up in just a moment, so you remain up to date with everything going on in the gacha genre. Trust me, you're not going to regret doing so. Stay flaccid.